Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you again for everybody for joining. And we welcome folks to put their names, their pronouns, and their locations in the chat today. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Malika.
All right, welcome everyone. We're so happy that you are here today with us. And as we begin every time we gather, I am going to share the tribal and land acknowledgement. So as we go into this, if we could just take a moment to just ground as we go forward together. Let's take a breath and come into the room. And I am honored to be able to share this statement released by the Narragansett tribe, official representatives and tribal elders that NESAWG is accountable to as headquartered in what is now known as the state of Rhode Island. As a way of introduction, we are here. We are the people who grew from this land. We are the First Nations. We are the sovereign tribal nations. We are the people who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. Our ancestors are buried here. We want to take a moment to honor our ancestors who faithfully stewarded our inherited territories. And we want to express our deep gratitude to Mother Earth, who has sustained us throughout all these generations. We are the inherent keepers and protectors of this land from time immemorial, from the survival of the next for the survival of the next 7 generations. We also want to acknowledge all those who did not have their ancestors buried under this soil since time immemorial. You are standing on stolen land. You are here living and working on this land as guests. As guests, we respectfully request that you make the commitment or the recommitment to honor Mother Earth, to stop the trampling of the land, to follow the leadership and stewardship of her First Nations, and to respect and uphold Indigenous sovereignty without violation. Give thanks. Right, welcome back, welcome forward. We are so excited. I'm so grateful today for Brother Marcus, who is here with us as our presenter this evening. Thank you to our NESAWG board. I see you out there and staff. I am Malika, and I'm here in Lenni Lenape territory, now known as Philadelphia. I have been the conference manager with NESAWG since 2018, and my title has shifted a little bit, but we are still here together. So as a reminder, this session is being recorded, and we're excited that we'll be able to share it with you afterwards. So we're going to start with some intros. We're going to learn more about the Sankofa series, and we are happy to be able to share with you NESAWG's racial equity transformation work. Then we're going to dive into Marco's presentation. We're going to have a Q&A, a moment of reflection at the end of the presentation, and then we're going to break out into a conversation and critical analysis. So we're going to be sharing the prompts now, so you can start thinking about them during the conversation. And then at the end, we're going to share those prompts again on the screen and dive into our chat together. If you're driving, I'm going to share them out loud. What are some key takeaways and lessons you got from today's presentation? How can we apply these takeaways to the work that we do today with racial equity transformation in the Northeast region? And based on what we heard and discussed today, how do you see NESAWG's role and purpose in the Northeast region? So we're grateful for your input and your participation and you thinking about these questions as we go forward into our presentation today. So what is NESAWG Sankofa series? Sankofa is a word from the Akan people of Ghana, and it means to go back and fetch it. It reminds us of the importance of returning to knowledge gained in the past and bringing it into the present to ensure a strong future. Initially launched in 2020, NESAWG Sankofa series is a webinar series that focuses on the wisdom of our network and community who are working towards creating meaningful change in the food system. This Sankofa series has shifted a little bit, and now we're focusing on it's a small part of NESAWG's racial equity transformation work. Our 2023 series will focus on lifting up voices of color and learning about our history and our roots and celebrating identities and cultures, gaining a better understanding of movements of resilience and change. Part of this racial equity work is our landscape assessment and regional mapping. It's important.
This meeting is being recorded.
It's important for us to understand who make up our network, what successes and challenges we're facing, and what NESAWG's role is in this work. And that's why we're going to be diving into this more. And that's why we want your participation throughout, especially at the end when we are asking for your feedback. So stay tuned, stay with us through the whole webinar. Don't leave us early. We also stay tuned to learn more about other opportunities to participate in upcoming landscape assessment sessions and map jams. Now I'm going to pass it on to our beautiful Executive Director, Christina, to introduce herself.
Muted. I was muted. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Malika. Welcome and welcome. And it's a pleasure to have you all here. I am Christina Cabrera. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Yes, and I'm the executive director for NESAWG, and I'm on Narragansett territory on what is now known as Providence, Rhode Island. We look forward to your participation, and I will pass it now to Shia.
Thanks, Christina. Hello, welcome everyone. I am Shia. I use she, her pronouns, and I am on Lenni Lenape territory, which is now known as Philadelphia. I'm really excited everyone could join us today. I am the program manager at NESAWG, and I have been with the NESAWG team since 2018. Quickly, before we dive into a really exciting program today, we have to just go over a few housekeeping rules. So I'll go ahead and share our community agreements with you all. And we just ask that everyone respect these agreements so we can create a really safe and inclusive space for this webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and just read through those really quickly. All right. Be curious, open, and respectful. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. We can't be articulate all the time, so give people a benefit of the doubt and ask questions. Take care of yourselves, stretch, eat, drink, use the restroom, rest. Confidentiality, don't speak for others without explicit permission, and don't share something communicated in a private space. One mic, one voice at a time. Take space and make space. So if you're somebody that's usually quiet, challenge yourself to take up more space. And if you usually find yourself talking a lot, try to make room for some quieter voices in the conversation. Avoid jargon, acronyms, and industry language. Use inclusive language that's accessible for everyone. Be aware of time. Enough, let's move on means that if you wanted to say something that's already been said, you don't need to say it. Speak from your own experience. So use I statements rather than generalizations. Challenge assumptions. Be conscious of intent versus impact. So no matter your intention, you are responsible for your impact. Avoid using isms without explaining what you mean by them. And accept and expect non-closure. So we know that this work takes time and we are just planting the seeds. And then just a few Zoom rules that I'm sure we all know by now, but be present, stay focused and engaged. And we want to give our presenters and each other our attention and respect. We'd love to see everyone's beautiful face. So if you are comfortable coming off camera, please do so, but don't feel like you have to. And we love to see who's in the room. So add your names and your pronouns. We ask that folks stay on mute if you're not talking. We encourage and welcome people to use the chat box. So we love when people engage with each other there and share comments and ask questions and share resources. Take care of yourselves. We're going to be here till 6 o'clock. So stay hydrated, grab a drink, grab a snack if you need to. And we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So if you have a question that pops up during the presentation, you can drop it in the chat or wait until the Q&A portion and we will get to it then. All right, and that is it for the housekeeping. So I'll pass it back to Malika.
Yes, housekeeping taken care of. And now we are getting into the good stuff. I'm so excited because today we are going to hear from Brother Marco McWilliams. Marco McWilliams is a Black Studies scholar, an adjunct professor, a DEIJ, and educational consultant, and a movement-based educator and organizer. He's a published writer with nearly 2 decades of engaged scholarship work in convening diverse learning communities. In addition to all of this, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and owner of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu studio where he teaches personal self-defense to marginalized communities. Brother Marco, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm handing it over to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see all of you here. I want to shout out my comrade in the struggle back here in Rhode Island, Christina Cabrera, for always making sure that I'm able to stay connected to, the projects moving on the ground, that she's always working on. And Malika and Shia, whatever they say, that's what I do. It's kind of how that operates. This is sensational to be here. We've been talking about this for a while, and I just want to say that this session, what I'm looking to create a space where we'll be able to engage in robust and uninhibited dialogue, right? That's my mission. As a point of introduction, I also want to be transparent in saying that this space is not a safe space. Now, what I mean by that is I can't create a safe space for y'all because I'm a Black man in America and we never seen a safe space, right? But what I endeavor to do is to create a courageous space, right? A space where we can come, show up, be courageous, and get into the history and have the dialogue. So I always like to be, be intellectually honest about that. Now, if somebody happens to know of some safe spaces, please email me, text me, call me, let me know. So I can get all my peoples and we'll come there. Um, I'll be there tomorrow. But in the meantime, we're gonna work with what we have to work with as we march a little closer toward freedom. So there are three sort of components of what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to open up this conversation with a concept that is either often misunderstood, right, and under discussed, or in some cases completely just not really known. In the US, in North America, particularly the US, the United States did not have slavery. We've been taught that, we hear this term, we all use it. I wanna nuance this for us. What the US constructed was a system called chattel slavery. CHATTEL. All right, I'm sure many of you have heard this term, chattel slavery. Chattel slavery comes over to the New England colonies, right? The US colonies as a legal formation. It's a legal term and it comes out of British law, okay? The term means private movable property. It's very important. Private movable property. It was never intended to be a term that could be applied to, in this case, a human subject. What the settler colonies will do, because remember, the idea that you're going to create a chattel slave society was historically a new formation. Nothing like that in the known human history had existed. And I'll explain what I mean. When we look throughout antiquity, of course, we see various systems of bondage and servitude in different places. Hell, we see that right now today, right? We don't have to go through history. But I want us to understand something clearly. The idea that you take a human subject and make them, through a process of dehumanization, make them the private property of another human, and then attach that as status to something called race, which also didn't exist yet. That is a radical new formation. Well, what provisions does this provide? And why did they use this? Slavery is commerce. And so the Europeans need a way, in terms of an emerging capitalist marketplace, to track and trace commerce in their ledgers. A way to track and trace debt. Well, if you're going to do that, you need a classification for humans. See, chattel, it just means your assets. Well, nobody had ever thought, well, what if my asset is another human? Well, we hadn't thought about that. Well, that's what we're going to do. Well, say more. What do you mean? Well, what if the human, this idea of making this human the asset, is going to be attached and affixed to this idea of race, which we have to construct, meaning that it can only be applied to Africans and initially indigenous folks. Well, what provisions does this provide, Jill? Well, one thing it says, well, now we can buy and sell. we can trade. You see, creditors could attach debt to the property of a planter, which means they could attach debt to the humans that the planter owned. Well, now we have to consider, Cynthia, insurance policies. We have to consider, can this person be given as a gift? And so we see the giving of gifts, right? When you look at the ledgers, you will find that many investors in slave voyages, they said, well, I need 2 female girls, approximately age 12 and under, because part of the idea is that this person who would then be your property would grow up with the family. Well, you already see the levels of problems with this, right? You have to come up with a formation of race. The person now is private property, so they're now commerce within a maritime marketplace. And so they have to, you got to have something they can write on this in the spreadsheet, right? In the Google spreadsheet, they got to track and trace the document. Okay. I want to just do a quick, as we open with this piece, I want to just do a quick point of a check-in here, because it's the only way out of that structure is either through escape, right, or open revolt, right? There's no, well, I'm gonna go to court and have my status changed and so on and so forth. As a quick point of check-in, does everyone understand what I'm saying? This status was for the duration of the life of the individual. Yeah, is it Ali?
Yep. Hi.
Hi.
I'm wondering if you could, and I apologize if you did say this, the difference between chattel slavery and slavery.
Yeah, okay, so right.
Differentiation.
Right. So here's some key points of differentiation. In a chattel slave system is racialized. And by racialized, what I mean is this anti-Black, meaning that only Africans can be chattel property. You could not own a white person, right, a European as your chattel property. They could be under some form of indenture, okay? But they could, the colonial laws, the way that they were written, and listen, many of the colonial laws, like by many, I mean like almost all, are not new. What the American colonies will do is go to the Caribbean and take the English and French and Dutch codes and just apply them in the colonies here. And those codes themselves come from Europe. But what happens is Europe doesn't have a chattel slave society. So once we get here in the Western Hemisphere, there's an instantiation of something entirely new and different. It's going to be affixed to race, and it will be for the duration of the person's life. They can't work their way out of it. Later on, you will see provisions in the law that have to do with emancipation, right, and things of this nature. But the core of it will be that it is attached to race. It is for the duration of the life of the individual who is the chattel slave, which of a necessity has to be a Black person. And the third point of distinction here, Ali, is that the status of the child will follow. This is legally written in. This is the development of American jurisprudence. The status of the child follows the condition of the mother. So if you own an enslaved woman, if you take a Black woman and she is your chattel property, you also, according to the law, own her as yet unborn children. So it's a condition now that stretches out into a future that doesn't actually exist. Like, how do you own people who aren't even born yet? This is a condition that a scholar named Orlando Patterson will define as something called social death. Okay? And he will introduce this concept, this idea of social, a living person who is in fact socially dead. They have no recourse within your political system, your legal system, your cultural system. They are subjugated at every register for which you account for a human being within that society. This is why when we move forward, if we fast forward to the American Civil War, the new US, less than 100 years old, will have to amend the Constitution 3 times back to back. And in history, we teach our students that those are called the Reconstruction Amendments. And what are those amendments? 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. What do they have to do with? The 13th Amendment, we know that one. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as punishment of a crime wherever the party shall have been duly convicted. Does that change the status? No. What it says is you can still enslave a person, but under a different set of terms. Okay? Well, what does the 14th wrestle with? The nation, Ali, is wrestling with, what do we do with this former chattel property? What will their condition be vis-a-vis the new country? Listen, if you're not an enslaved person, what are you? They can't figure it out. So you know what they say, Jesse? They say, okay, anybody who's born here, we're just going to call them a citizen, which is the same one that we see immigrant communities wrestling with today. That's a 14th Amendment dating back to American chattel slavery, but they don't teach us that in the schools. And then what's the 15th? How does anyone know that they are a citizen in a modern democratic society that has to do with suffrage, the vote? You can vote for your elected leaders. Now we know that the 15th, this is male voters, right? We don't get to the conversation of women voting until much later on, 1920, 19th Amendment. So this status, this notion of a person being chattel property, as you can see here, is going to create an entirely different ontological formation in how Black folk and white folk exist within the society. So in our next segment here, this is going to flow into like what's happening in Rhode Island. How does Rhode Island become the central component in this? Okay. Ali, is any of this feeling helpful? Okay. Okay. Now, I want to help illustrate this. I want to turn to a and I'm gonna just read you the actual law. In the year 1703, Rhode Island, the Rhode Island General Assembly is going to pass a law. Okay. Here, I want us to think through the political genealogy of the ideation of chattel slavery, because it's, listen, we're looking at the early formations of this concept of what we call race and racism. Okay. And a beautiful way to track this is through colonial law and policy early on, like before there was anything called in America. Right? This is why looking at law, looking at the political history and trajectory paints a very, very clear picture. We see what they were thinking because they put it into their laws. You see. Now, Rhode Island General Assembly, this is 1703. These dates are important. There is no such thing as a United States yet in any formal political formation. Okay, here's what it states. If any Negroes or Indians, either freemen, servants, or slaves, do walk in the street of the town of Newport, that's Newport, Rhode Island. Newport, Rhode Island, by the way, in this period was the financial capital in this region, not Boston or any other town in this colony after 9 o'clock of the night without a certificate from their masters or some English person of said family with them or some lawful excuse for the same, it shall be lawful for any person to take them up and deliver them to a constable. Now, what I'm going to do is a quick screen share here. Share just because I want people to see what it is that I'm saying. And let me get us queued up here. And see, where did I put that? Okay. Can everybody see that? Everybody see this okay? Okay, you see that highlighted part? Can I have a guest reader to read that highlighted part one more time? Whoever wants, just unmute yourself and begin to read.
If any Negroes or Indians, either freemen, servants, or slaves, do walk in the town of Newport or any other town in this colony after 9 o'clock of a certain, I can't see my whole screen because I can't get rid of people on the side.
The people are gotten in your way.
Yeah, I can't see the whole screen. I thought.
I can finish it. Want me to go ahead and finish it?
Yeah, go ahead and finish it.
After 9 of the clock of the night, without a certificate from their masters or some English person, said family with them, or some lawful excuse for the same, that it shall be lawful for any person to take them up and deliver to a constable.
Yeah, sorry, the type is supposed to be deliver them to a constable.
Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a typo on my part. You're good. Okay. I want to ask everyone a question. In this quote, coming in Rhode Island General Assembly law, do you see anywhere in this quote from this law where it says white people? Where like this, the term white persons is used. Now, there's this rhetorical question. We know it's not there. So I have another question. Let's have a little fun. I was already having fun. I hope y'all having fun too. Let's have a little fun. If, let's say we're in the town of Newport or Providence, and I look and It's 9:30 p.m. And I see Christina and Malika out hanging out talking. And I say, aha, I got them. And I'm going to take them to the local constable. What do you think they're going to say to me? What do you think their reaction is going to be? I said, I caught you. It's after 9 p.m. Y'all out here. You don't have any English person with you. You don't have any kind of paperwork, any kind of certificate. What do you think Malika and Christina, they're going to look at me and say what?
We're gonna do some jujitsu on you.
They about to get ready to do some jujitsu. They're going to say, excuse me, smart ass. Have you looked in a mirror lately? All three of us going to be in trouble. What are you doing out here? Okay, what happens if Ali sees them out? And Ali says, gotcha. Y'all are coming with me. Let's go. Now what happens? What happens, Ali? Tammy, tell us what happens.
They go to the constable
Yeah, they go to the constable
and then some probably.
and you get a reward, they get punished. What's obviously what's going on here. This law, does it matter whether it's 9:30 or 8:30? It's not like Ali was cool at 8:30 and then all of a sudden at 9:01, Malika and Christina's like, come on, girl, we better run. Right? They see Cynthia or Jill and they say, oh, let's go the other way. It's 9:05. We're in trouble. What I'm saying here is that Rhode Island General Assembly deputized every white person in the colony at 9 p.m. Every white person in the colony is now deputized. They become the police. This shifts, and I'm saying shifts, it creates a particular kind of social relation between what will become white folks and enslaved or black folks. When we take that and pull that thread all the way through into something, and I'm gonna start saying this, and I want somebody to finish it for me. This is it will be the final iteration of it before the lead up to the American Civil War, the fugitive slave. Come on, Jesse. Type it in the comments, whatever. Y'all thought y'all was gonna get on the Zoom and just sit around and look at me the whole time. Y'all didn't know this is gonna be interactive. What is it? What am I obviously saying? We remember our history lessons from high school. Yes. Who's that? MB Reynolds? Go ahead, MB Reynolds. We know what this is. 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. What does that say? Reynolds, you're on mute, Reynolds. If you just unmuting.
What are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. What is it? What essentially, what does it mean? What does it stipulate?
Uh-oh, you went on me. Not very good. People on the states that supposedly had eliminated slavery, you could go up and find people, kidnap them, and bring them back down to the country.
Ooh, I see you, and Jill said something too.
My.
Yes, exactly. 1850 Fugitive Slave Act says that a Southern agent traveling up north can compel a white Northerner to help participate in the recapture of somebody that they say is a slave. And if the white person refuses, what happens, Jill? They receive a penalty. By the refusal to participate, they essentially open themselves up to criminal exposure. And so what you have is the abolitionist movement will jump in on that. They jump in on that. They say, see, this slavery stuff, we told you this was horrible. We told you there's a problem. Now it's got everybody in a mess, right? They use what I call the Abraham Lincoln excuse. They say, listen, we don't know if them Negroes up there in that attic is slaves or free. We don't know if they from Georgia, Alabama, or New Hampshire. And you know what? We don't give a damn. But you're asking us to participate in that? I don't think so. Now every abolitionist began to create broadsides, right? You can Google these, you've seen them. They said, watch out for the slave catchers. There was a popular movie made based on a book. Man's name was Solomon Northup. What's that called? 12 Years a Slave. Everybody remember that? Remember that, Karen? You remember Northup? Was he ever a slave? No, his father was. And his father's white owner in New York writes in his will, he says, upon my death, my chattel property is to be free. It's emancipation. So the son, he was like, I've never been a slave. And he's captured and taken away 12 years. Okay. Now, the movie didn't tell you where they came from, where the slave master had come to New York from. You had to read the book for this. Newport, Rhode Island. Stop playing. Stop playing. Throughout the 18th century, Rhode Island merchants controlled between 60 and 90% of the American trade in African slaves. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna read that one more time. Because Jay and Ella and Katie and Thea and Mary and Hillary, I don't know if they heard that. I know Karen heard it.
I heard.
Throughout the 18th century, Rhode Island merchants control between 60 and 90% of the American trade in African slaves. Hillary said, I heard you. Yes, this little colony and eventual state, Rhode Island, will at periods control between 60 to 90% of the trade. You want to know how? After the revolution, they had no serious American competitors and held a virtual monopoly in that branch of commerce. In no other colony or state did the slave trade play as significant a role in the total economy. The economy of the colony and state of Rhode Island, damn near in its entirety, was connected in some way, shape, form, or fashion, directly or indirectly, to the transatlantic slave trade. There was no component of it. In fact, that was not. The shipbuilding industry. You have to understand that when we see these movies and we talk about the slave ships, and the slave ships travel across the Atlantic Ocean, going to West Africa, coming back to the Caribbean, coming back up the Eastern Seaboard, dropping off slaves, moving raw materials and products and processed materials, slave ships. Anytime you hear slave ship in any kind of story, in any kind of movie, in any kind of book, in any kind of conversation about slavery, and you hear somebody say slave ship, there's something you need to understand. That it is between a 60 and at some periods, Ali, up to a 90% chance that that slave ship left the seaport in its origin in South County, Rhode Island. Why did they tell us this in school? That damn near all the slave ships were coming from this one tiny little colony. And remember, when you have a slave, that's a whole industry. The wood, the outfitting, the crew. Those are lucrative jobs to have. Cynthia, the longest slave trading family in U.S. history is a family out of Bristol, Rhode Island. They call it the Wolves. One of their descendants made a documentary about it, split like a lightning rod, struck right through the family. She finds out that that's where her family's great wealth come from. Let me keep moving. I see the clock going. See, I'm just getting warmed up. Y'all done got me excited now. Go ahead, NESAWG. In Rhode Island, the fortunes of individual merchants and whole towns were intimately bound up in the slave trade. You all ready? From 1725 to 1807, what has been called the American slave trade might better be termed the Rhode Island slave trade. It's in Rhode Island that the dollar of American capitalism begins to circulate. It's still going. Listen. In 1764, 27 voyages will leave Portsmouth, Rhode Island, just to give you a date and some numbers, okay? Some of y'all like some numbers, so go some numbers. They carried 3,193 slaves. These folks are not traveling necessarily to Rhode Island. They're being moved to the Caribbean. Okay? Many Rhode Island merchants own plantations. You take Cuba, for example. This family in Bristol owned multiple plantations in Havana. So there's a way in which they're responsible for the population of Havana of enslaved Africans. After American Revolution, we get to 1805, just to grab another number. 51 voyages, 6,570 folks. Okay. Now, let me find my slide presentation again, because I want us to see a couple of things here as we set up for the group discussion. Let me re-share my screen back again here. I think this is the one. Okay, why do I keep doing that? Okay. Okay, so everyone see that okay? You have the Caleb Green house. This is on Union Street. Okay. And this is deeded to Caleb Green by his father-in-law. Okay. Now, this is the lower image is of a present day of that house. And you have a lot of these same kinds of things, right? When you come to Rhode Island, you see a lot of this old like colonial infrastructure, and like, it's like, oh, that's a cute, you know, bed and breakfast or whatever. And you have no idea like the history of the space in Rhode Island, particularly Providence and Newport and Bristol are filled with these kind of structures, a bit like you'd be walking past where like a slave trading block was, or where the ships used to come in, and the streets are named after these like prominent, you know, white families, you know, who were prominent slave traders. I think you all know that Brown University here, the university literally has its name from the Brown family, right? One of the most prominent slave trading families. And they gave so much money, and I think it was like a land grant to the university, and the university names itself after this family, right? So it's literally in the built environment. Now, can I have a quick volunteer reader for this one?
I can see my whole screen now.
Aha,
I hope my voice sounds better on that side of the
sounds
screen than
great.
it does on this.
it sounds great.
Okay. So the whole thing or just the red parts?
No, the whole one on this slide.
Okay. Whose freedom? In the manumission document shown here, Caleb Green of Providence discharges 1/4 part of one enslaved person and 1/2 part of another. Parts of Black people were partially free. I, Caleb Green of Providence, in the colony of Rhode Island, under a sense of opposition and injustice of buying and selling men as slaves, by complying with the manifestations of that divine light which has shined and is shining in the mind of man. December 15th, 1774.
Okay. Who's that for?
That was for him. He was looking to be absolved, not for the people or the 1/4 of a person and the 1/2 a person.
Who's
How does
that
that work?
for, Ella? How's that gonna work?
It doesn't.
Caleb is he's washing his soul. Now, Karen, can you just tell me how you're gonna free 1/4 part of somebody and a 1/2 part of it? Like, I want you to understand that there is no logic to white supremacy. And that's what happens. That's why we miss it, because we try to track and trace white supremacy in some like logical way. You say, if we can just get everybody that I love. Listen, that was a legal document. And if you come to Rhode Island, you can walk past Caleb Green's house. That's a good. How can you do that? 1/4 part is free. How does that work? Right, it clearly doesn't. Okay, I'm gonna set us up as we close for a breakout room conversation, and then we're gonna have the Q&A. Am I understanding how the time is working, O'Shea, or I don't already messed it up?
No, you're on a roll.
Okay.
Yeah, we got about 10 more minutes and then we can break out into some Q&A.
Okay. I'm gonna put us in a breakout room, but I just wanna go with you on the slide, on one of the slides, the prompt. Okay, we're gonna talk about the prompt, and then we're gonna go into a breakout room, and then y'all gonna have a little learning community right in that space and break out the knowledge. Okay. Now let me just share this back again. Okay. Everybody can see that, right? We good, we Gucci. Anybody want to come to Warwick, Rhode Island, go to Caleb Green house and see if he's still there, knock on the door? Find out hey, whatever happened to the rest of them parts that you didn't manumit? How did that work? Listen, maybe the little elephant in the room, the little baby elephant in the room is this word called reparations. Don't even get me started on that, because that's a whole nother Zoom NESAWG session that we'll have to talk about later. Okay. Now let's set this up. This is the class discussion part. Okay. Come on, computer, you can do it. Okay. Here's the 2 prompts here. What are the implications of a law that allows white constables, watchmen, and others to take up and apprehend any Indian, mulatto, and Negro servant? What does this law reveal about the ways in which whiteness and blackness have been constructed? And are there any connections we can make to explain white vigilantism? That's what these colonial laws create. Listen, when you are talking about American slavery, you are also talking about the construction of white settler society. You see, it's not just about how the society has treated Black and indigenous peoples. It's about the ways in which it has compelled white folks to collude within this larger ontological structure. You understand what I'm saying? It's we've too mistakenly had this sort of like one-way trajectory. And I'm like, it's like, no, like white folks, that did something to you and the way you think and understand the world and people and your place in it as well. And this is why I say at the top of the Zoom call, I can't create no safe space because all of us got to participate in it. You remember what Dr. King said? He said, in the end, this nation would not only have to repent for the shameful deeds of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. And oftentimes I give these talks and folks say, well, what do we do? Jesse, what the hell do we do? What do we do, Karen and Ella? Jill sitting on the couch. Jill said, I don't know what the hell to do. This wasn't my idea. If we listen to Dr. King, He said, the first thing you can do is refuse to remain silent in the face of injustice. That's what I tell folks to do, particularly white folks. Find an injustice and refuse to be silent about it. That's the first step. Do you see white supremacy and racial justice, injustice happening in the world? The answer to that question is yes. You can. I'll help you out with that first one. You can check the box yes on that. I'm gonna give you that answer. Well, the next item on the flow chart as we go into the breakout room is, how do I find the ways to not remain silent about that? That's where it takes courage. You got to have courage for that one. It takes no courage to see the injustice. But now to not be silent about it, woo! Listen, we can go into the breakout room because I'll be, I'm fired up right now. Y'all got me, man. Okay, Shay, hit that magic button.
All right, I think the groups are finishing up, so I'll just give them another couple seconds to join. Seemed like we had some good conversations, Marco. I didn't want to end it, but get everybody back
Yeah.
in the group, and then we can bring it back for some group combo and some Q&A. All right, I think that's everybody back. Marco, do you want to close us out, and then we can break down into some Q&A?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we can go right into the Q&A. I appreciate all of y'all for being here, and we all have to think and build together. The answers never gonna come from one person or one idea or even one concept, right? And so we all have different footprints in the spaces that we are, and different, ways that we can use the power that we have. So that's what these sessions are about, is figuring out how do we amplify that. So this has been dope. Yeah, we can head right into any Q&A folks have.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much. This is so good. And we're going to drop in the chat, and we'll be dropping it a couple different times so that you can learn more about Marco's work. And right now, if you have questions for Marco, you can drop them in the chat as well, or you can raise your hand and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. I know there was a question earlier, Jill. I'll share your question that you had earlier in the conversation. Jill asked, other than the issue of slaves being Black or Indigenous, how is the status of a slave different at the beginning of the country versus slavery anywhere else?
So it's primarily through this distinction that the assignment of a status of a chattel slave to someone is going to be racialized, right? It's going to be attached to this emerging concept, which again had not existed which is this idea of race. So concomitant with the creation of the status of a chattel slave, then not the only concomitant with it, but it is part and parcel of it, right? Is what the hell is race? All of these things have to be constructed. It is very much a social construction. We know that there is only one race, that's the human race. But that doesn't work well when you get ready to create a chattel slave society. You got to divide some people up. And you have to make it essential. It can't be just about class. You have to make people in the society believe that they are essentially, there's an essential difference. And you say, oh, that's called race. And attached to that essentialism has to then come a set of lies. I don't know how many people had a chance to read the little reading assignment in the lead up to this, right? But part of it touches on this idea of like white settler moves toward innocence. What's the way? What does Caleb have to do to get his? You have to introduce this idea of spiritual freedom of religion. That's what. Listen, God. If I couch this in religion, you know, you could use Christianity to do all kind of shenanigans, right? So this is, and then the commerce can proceed. Right? It's like, that's not a human. That Negro, that's a Negro. That means that's a slave. That's a chattel slave. That's somebody's private property. In one particular case that this question brings to mind is a case, and I'm forgetting the date, I'm sorry, but there's a particular case coming out of, in this case, Mississippi, where a slave from a neighboring plantation has come over to another plantation, and he rapes or sexually assaults, I forget what it was now, a girl, an enslaved girl on another plantation. And what proceeds next is a court battle. And you know what the court decides? This is between the two owners. He said, listen, we don't have anything in our law books that say that you can rape an enslaved woman. There's nothing written in our law that says you can do that. So she was just damaged property. She wasn't human. When we're saying she wasn't human, what we mean, Hillary, is that the American legal structure did not see her. There's no law written. We didn't write that. Rendering only white women is rapeable. Look, I didn't come on here to be lying. We got to talk real in here today. So yes, it is as messy as it sounds. Other thoughts, questions, comments, curiosities, concerns, cacophonies, catechisms, conundrums, conflagrations, calumnies, consternations, testing. Let's talk, y'all.
All right. So Allie's group was wondering if the Rhode Island law is still written in the law.
So these things, you find them in the Rhode Island's like legal archive, right? They're still in the political archive, but I promise you, if you go out on the streets at 9 o'clock after night in Rhode Island and try to grab a black person talking about I'm taking you to the local constable, you're gonna run into some problems.
It too.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
So yeah, a lot of these colonial laws are retired from the books as such, in the sense that, like, this, of course, we have like modern, in any other case, right? This is being assault and kidnapping. You understand what I'm saying? But in terms of the political archival record, it's all there.
Yeah. She had just put in the chat and reminding everybody to drop your questions in there or raise your hand, because we want to make sure that you have an opportunity. Karen?
Go ahead, Karen.
I'm just gonna go ahead because it doesn't look like there's a lot of other people. And so I'm just curious, and I'm very grateful for you being here today to help people understand. Thank you. I'm curious. First of all, I feel like that same othering is what we are doing to our natural world, which of course is us. And I feel like our environmental and our climate crisis is rooted in racism. And I am a climate justice organizer, and I'm trying to connect the dots and educate myself. Sorry, my son's getting some food. It's okay, honey. But I don't see, I'm trying to figure out in the short time that I feel we have to make change where my energy should lie, because I feel I'm a fairly powerful person, and I feel I can help. And but I feel like there are so many different opportunities for that. And I don't see that. I've been studying this idea of non-reformist reforms, and this idea that I don't know that we can fix what's happening in our country, in the world, in this imperialistic kind of society. And I'm drawn to, honestly, like eco-socialism and this idea of kind of just burning it down and starting over. I know these are really heavy things. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about, where should we put our energies, other than obviously talking to people, meeting people, going into neighborhoods, doing everything we can to show up in spaces correctly as we can. But how do we help in a way that which system, that maybe that's my question, which system is the best to try to infiltrate?
Yeah, this is a powerful sort of invocation that you've given us here, Karen. You know what I one of the ways I will respond to that is just by saying that, like, oftentimes we lose track of the fact that, like, these are like structural things. These are like systemic things, right? These don't just exist in the realm of how people feel about other people different from them, or they feel about the earth and the planet. These are things in our systems, in our institutions. And it's at that level that we have to organize movement work in a collective way. But you know what happens, Karen? Check this out. That requires a long distance runner. And we got too many sprinters. Right, Julie? Everybody want to be a sprint. Oh, we're gonna work on a campaign. I'm gonna work on this campaign. I'm gonna work on that campaign. I'm gonna, And I was listening to Katie talk a little bit. This has got to be movement work. Movement is long distance. And in movement, where you ever watch a long distance marathon, and what do they have? They have pace runners. Somebody who runs alongside you to help you set the pace. We got to run alongside each other and keep the pace. I'm not where Karen is at, but I can support Karen. Karen is not where Julie's at. Julie's not where Katie's at, but we build and we connect and we support in the direction of thinking about the ways in which we create institutional structural change, both at the policy level and on the ground. What that old song from the 70s said, everyday people.
Can I jump in?
Please jump all the way in.
I just wanted to offer Karen, I know something that I often will say to people, specifically white women, if I'm being just keeping it real, is resources and just maybe, looking for the people that are stewarding land or trying to do things in the climate, because I mean, for me, I stewarding land is a part of the whole climate justice crisis, just really giving back to the land at this point in whatever way, shape, form we can. It's an endless way of like doing your part to just do something more to help the land right now. But in terms of, racism, and if you're asking like moving in a way that's causing the least amount of harm to Black and brown people, Indigenous people, the resources, land, money, I mean, whatever shape, form that comes in. But I think that is a huge, like right now, I'm like, I just want to get to the land. I know that, what I'm supposed to be doing is so much greater. And yeah, a lot of that has to do with having a space to start helping others in my community, right? And letting them go back then out, like the ripple effect, because it's not ultimately your responsibility to like help the Block I grew up on. It's my responsibility. I take on that in a lot of ways. And so I think for the people that have come into my life, it's been like, here, this is what I have, here you go, yours to do whatever with now. And like letting the resources go, because that part is super important too. Like we have to learn. And in order to do that, like, we're not gonna always understand where we're coming from, and that's okay. And so how do we like do the least amount of harm as we move through this? That's how I'm moving, and just, being super conscious of also like being a biracial person and able to kind of be a bridge too, while honoring my brown girlness. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share.
It's such a beautiful segue into this next part of the conversation, because that this is why we're doing this. NESAWG is doing this racial equity. We're transforming, right? Because we realize that our organization, in its past form, wasn't where it could be and where it can be. And so I am going to first express extreme gratitude to my brother Marco. This has been incredible. I can't wait. And the great thing is that we have more time together. So this is just part one of Marco's conversations on the Sankofa series. So make sure you tell your friends that they missed out. And I just thank you for this powerful work that you are doing, and for your teaching. It's so important in this time. And I'm seeing people excited to do the work when I look onto the screen. And so I'm turning this over to Christina so we can keep digging deeper and figuring out how we can make that change together, and how NESAWG can be a part of that change as well. So take it away, Christina.
And I echo that sentiment, Malika. Thank you, Marco, so much for bringing this important conversation. And now, how can we tie this conversation even further to the land and agricultural and food work that we're all doing, or most of us are doing? But first of all, would love to hear, 1 word, 2 word takeaways, kind of like a shower of ideas, that what are some key takeaways? If you want to drop them on the Zoom chat or unmute yourself, either way works. But this would be good also for us to ponder as we go home. Let's give ourselves a couple minutes for that. Marco,
I just want to say to everyone real quick, I'm going to leave my email in the chat here. If anybody wants to reach out to me with any kind of follow-up whatsoever, continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out and holler at me. And I love to, love to break bread.
Thank you, Marco. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. Karen says. Rochelle shares the book Race and American Culture. We have Jesse learning new terms like chattel slavery and social debt to accurately describe the history and legacy of slavery in the US. Tammy feel a deeper understanding of the power grabs in New England. Rochelle, the truth of slavery and chattel slavery sucks. So, I know we have 20 minutes here, but so I'm just going to scale down a little bit. But as we think about these takeaways, how can we apply these takeaways to the work that we do today with racial equity transformation in the Northeast region, understanding that in the farm and food system, not everybody is involved in systems change, racial equity transformation, but some are thinking about it. Some are in the midst of it. Some have worked on it for a few years, and we all have different experiences. So let's talk about how these ideas and these concepts are not abstract or not something of the past, but how can we apply them today to the specific work and the specific role that we have in our communities in the farm and food system specifically. Julie adds a deeper, darker understanding of how the wealth, in terms of takeaway, sorry, a deeper, darker understanding of how the wealth of New England economy and institutions was built. And Tammy is raising her hand, so feel free to unmute yourself.
So I kind of want to throw that question back at y'all, because you do seem to be doing awesome work. And I just see white supremacy in all of the ag organizations, like local ag, USDA. And I know that smaller organizations are working on stuff, but I guess I'm just like, I don't want to be involved in agriculture anymore because of that. Or I don't want to be involved with the systems work because I feel like I'm hitting my head against a wall all the time. And I'm just curious, as far as y'all are concerned, because I see some of the struggles that NESAWG has been going through over the past few years, working with old school white people who have been doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time, and with their power grabs and land grabs, and how y'all see moving forward in those relationships.
So I'm
That's
sorry.
vague.
The question, sorry, and the question is how, could you rephrase the question or summarize?
How you see moving forward with the systems and the race relations as they are, and building community in and moving forward with that.
And that question is for everybody here in the room. It's for NESAWG or
It's for NESAWG folks, because I know that you guys have really been, I mean, I'm assuming you all have been struggling with this and thinking about it a lot.
Well, I can jump
can-
in just really quickly, and thanks for that question, Tammy. I think a big thing for us, which we're still in the midst of, but a big thing is just being transparent about our transformation process, and understanding that, like, and acknowledging that there are issues in the way that we've done things, and acknowledging that there's issues in this larger system that we're part of, and acknowledging that, like, we haven't done things perfectly, and we're open and we want to learn how to do better. I know that's sort of a vague answer, but that's been a big piece of the work as we're in this, like, exploration phase of our transformation, is admitting that we are not perfect, and that, like, and really diving into the resources that our region has been offering. I think that's been one of our first steps.
And I'd love to veggie back on that, is not just admitting and seeing where the organizational faults lie, but like making the change, right? So a lot of times people are seeing it and they just keep their eye, it's like we see it, but not making a change. And so one of the first things that we did was our board transitioned to now we're almost all BIPOC. So it's a BIPOC led organization. Our board transitioned. Our Christina is our new ED. So we have a BIPOC majority staff. And then we're doing this, like, really deep, we're doing that deep transformational work. So we're not doing as much, like, outward facing work, although we are out there, but we're doing some of this internal work, and you all we're at, that's why we have this part of the of our Sankofa series, and that's why we're doing this landscape assessment, because we want to know what the people want. We want to know, and so we're taking this time to really get, to assess, and not just say we know and this is what the people want. We're saying, what do you want? So it's been really incredible to be a part of.
I will also add, and thank you for the staff's beautiful words and support in all this work. It's not an easy work, and it's not a work for it to be individual. Like Marco was saying, we need to work collectively and we need to support each other. There's a lot of trust building that needs to happen because with all these laws, they ripped away the trust from each other. They have, we need to have a lot of patience with each other and a lot of grace. And when it's time to call each other out, we will, in love, because our motto and our the way that we're doing this racial equity transformation is doing systems change rooted in love, and it has to be actual and real. But it does have to translate into movement building. It does have to translate into collaborate to co-liberate. It does have, there is translocal organizing work that needs to happen across regions and throughout the country, where there are place-based needs, but there's regional work that needs to be done, changes in the system. And very importantly, we need to go back to the Aboriginal roots and not forget that this is the land of the Aboriginal people of Turtle Island, whose grandfathers and ancestors and grandparents and ancestors from time immemorial, they're buried here. Their practices, their knowledge of the land, their relationship with the land, their alignment with their land, their relationship with all living beings, and the balance that they have in this work is a practice and an expertise and a knowledge that no other community has at this scale. And if we don't recognize that, and if we don't honor the protocols of our Aboriginal people, if we don't lift their sovereignty, this is something that we really need to go back to, the ways and practices. So that's, I know that people need to leave, but there's a lot to talk about with that answer, with that question.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your leadership and work on this. It matters, and I see you and I appreciate you.
We appreciate you all. Allie?
I don't know what time it is here. A few more minutes. I have a comment / observation within the context of this conversation. And first of all, Professor Marco, thank you so very much for your engagement, conversation, incredible depth of knowledge, and just your whole approach today has been just very appreciated. So thank you for that. And of course, NESAWG, thank you for convening and all that you do and are doing. I think when we talk obviously around our food system, we understand it to be rooted in slavery and exploitation of land, people, labor, right? That's the fundamental foundation of our industrial food system today. And as someone who is steeped in food systems transformation, I very often see, read, hear about a quote unquote sort of collective movement and agreement around that we need to transform our food system. And those pathways look very, very different, right? So there is a food system that is transforming, and what our future of food looks like, what those pathways are conflicting. And it's a very confusing, mucky field already, in a very confusing, mucky field of our industrial system. So even the transformation is starting to get very confusing and conflicting. And I think what I don't see as much, which I'm trying to do in my work, that's what I have based my work on, and what I would what I would like to see more thought leaders do is connect those dots on how slavery and exploitation continue today. Again, not only within the context of our industrial system, that's sort of a given, but within the context of food system transformation. And for example, when we learn about capital investment in land at its most fundamental, it is the same thread as far as I'm concerned. It just looks a little different, and it might be under the auspice of, let's say, a regenerative agriculture or even like a sustainable agriculture. What is sustainable about vast millions of dollars being invested in land by some, by people just sort of, pulling the strings behind a computer screen? So that's just one example. And so how can we be very explicit in claiming the narrative? No, this is what a just and equitable food system looks like. This is our future of food. It's about people and community. And it's most fundamentally about healing our history. We cannot move forward in this way. And so how do we do that collectively? How do we create a narrative where we are all on that
Yeah.
same? So,
And that's a question for everybody, for Marco, for NESAWG, for who are you asking? Who would you like to direct that question to?
I apologize. It's more of just an observation because it's something I
Mhm.
hold a lot, and I don't see a lot of conversation around it. I don't read a lot about those explicit dots being connected. So if anyone would like to respond, or if anyone shares that same sentiment and thinking, I'd appreciate thoughts. Or
Thank you so much, Ali. I just might say, just as a quick point of direct response, we have to be intellectually honest with ourselves, right? Like the plantation is everywhere and it's big. I always say it whenever Harriet Tubman, first escapes, and makes it know that no moment in time is she actually thinking she had like taken down the whole system, of a slave society. And that can feel paralyzing, right? Like that can freeze you in your tracks. It's like, man, I don't even know where do we all begin to do this. And so I think that it's important to understand that like the systems and the powers and the ideas that gave us what we have delivered that to us through their own sets of collective efforts over the centuries, and that's maintained, it's continually reified and reconstituted and reinstituted and reimagined. And so we have to find ways to get into those interstitial spaces and disrupt the linearity of the trajectory of that, all the things that you just said, right? And so I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I appreciate what you said. That was big. I'll stop right there. If it comes back, I'll say something.
I will just add that there are frameworks and movements, people movement that address those things and directly address, expose, and build, change the story, change the rules, move the money. That there is a very clear distinction of those solutions that are still that they're using nature to capitalize, to commodify, to for geoengineering, for carbon offsets and carbon for solar panels and farmland, but it's important to understand that we need to work together under the frameworks that have a very clear understanding of the true relationship and how to be in right relationship with Mother Earth and with each other, and then work collectively, doing movement building around these principles and these values and these practices and these processes. We can't do it individually. We need to come together with solid frameworks, and they're out there, and I would invite you. There are there's several organizations doing this work. I know that there are people here that might want to share some, but I just dropped one of several links from Indigenous Environmental Network, Climate Justice Alliance. You Just Transition is a framework that you might want to look into. New Economy Coalition is an organization. There's an annual meeting coming up, and you might be interested in Solidarity Economy. It's important that we work together in with the movement building that is going to get us out of this, and not with the capitalist and settler models.
And can I interject for a moment and just encourage everyone to donate to NESAWG, because we are here and we're doing the work. And Shia, I don't know if you can put in the chat our donation information, but you know, support the organizations that are doing the work, and that is extraordinarily helpful. So yeah, I'm gonna turn it back over to Christina as we wrap up for the evening.
Yeah, there's 2 minutes left, I think. Actually, if there are any further questions, feel free to keep them coming at info.nesawg.org. Shia, I don't know if we can plug in there the links for people to sign up to our newsletter and email distribution list, because these issues are addressed and are, you know, we will continue discussing them in our newsletter and email distribution list. We're happy to, you know, to receive any and all questions that you have. Shia, is this something should we be wrapping up?
Yeah, she put it in there. And also, we do send out a post-webinar survey. So that is another time that you can share more after you've had a moment to digest. Shia is putting up here our dates, our next dates. And so, yeah, so this is the first Sankofa series with Brother Marco, and then we're going to be back with him on August 2nd. So tell your friends that they missed out, and make sure that they join us and that you do as well. So we're going to be examining the radical culture and political technologies Black people innovated to help feed, house, and free each other from jail in the midst of civil rights political struggle. Wow, you don't want to miss that one.
You do not want to miss that section.
Oh, Brother
I'm very
Marco, I
excited
love
about
it,
that.
man. It looks so amazing. Yeah,
This is just the
sign up. You
beginning,
can,
y'all. It's going to be an incredible summer. Definitely
It
pull
is.
back up.
It is. And then I'm excited that I get to invite you all to Philly, to Shia and I, we have a center in Philly called One Art Community Center. And so on July 15th, we're going to have an in-person gathering, because you know, we're all on this Zoom, and it's so good when we can be face to face. There's going to be a produce safety field day, and we're going to have a map jam, and we're also going to have a delicious farm to table meal together, and then we're going to dig deeper into this, you know, assessment, this transformation work together in person. So keep your eye out for all of these wonderful things coming up. And we thank you so much. Oh my goodness, we did it on time. 6:01. Brother Marco, you are amazing. Keep on doing this work. We thank you and thank you and thank you again. And we thank each of you for showing up today, and thank you for your support. Have a great evening, everyone. Peace.
Everyone.
Peace.
Take care.